And I got to break another tradition for you. Who were these Magi? Well, traditionally, people say they're three kings named Casper, Balthazar, and Melchior, supposedly representing the three sons of Noah. That's why if you see one of the kings, like in the manger scene or in a play, he's one of dark complexion because one of Noah's sons, Ham, his descendants, were people of Ethiopia. So you see a lot of tradition that has gone through the years that these Magi were three kings, right? And people say that's because they had all kinds of treasures and stuff like that. In fact, the tradition has gotten stronger and stronger that in the 12th century, a bishop supposedly actually found the skulls of these three kings. And how did he know that they were the skulls of the three kings? This is a quote from the guy. Their eye sockets were looking towards Bethlehem. You laugh at that. Most of you believe that they were three kings. Well, Andrew, who were they? Well, let's look at Scripture. We see in verse 1, after Jesus was born, probably several months, close to even a year after Jesus had been born, we see somebody showing up during the time of King Herod. Who were they? Magi, underline Magi. Where were they from, guys? From the east, underlined east. They came to Jerusalem and asked, actually in the Greek it says they asked. They kept asking, where's the King of the Jews? Where's the King of the Jews? Where's the King of the Jews? We saw his what? Star, underlined star, when it rose, and we have come to worship him. Stop. Let's find out who these Magi were. Number one, Magi, Greek, magos is the name. That's where we get our word for magic or magician. Okay? Now you need to understand, we cannot be 100% certain about the Magi as to where they first originated from. But as you're going to see, I think I can break it down for you. Number one, we don't know how many of them came. Tradition says 3. Why? Because there were 3 gifts. We don't know how many came. We don't know how they came. Tradition shows that they were on a camel. I don't know. Maybe they came in a BMW. I don't know. Okay? But we do know something about the Magi. They were experts in astronomy, which is the science of stars and planets. Thus, they were men of wisdom, wise men. But there was something else about them. They were men of the occult, way back when. They liked the speculation and superstition of astrology, worshiping the stars and the planets. As you dig a little bit deeper about the Magi, you find out some more about their early tradition, where they came from. We read that they came from the east. In the Greek, it literally means from the rising of the sun, the Orient. Now, that doesn't mean that they were Chinese or whatever. We don't know. But they came from the Orient. And as you dig deeper into the kind of background of the Magi, you find out a little bit more. They probably were a priestly tribe from within the Medes and the Persians, which means the Magi, okay, probably came from either Persia, which is modern-day Iran, or even Babylon, which is modern-day Iraq. And how do we know that? Because actually in the Bible, we start to see a picture of the Magi. Let's go to Daniel chapter 2. Daniel, godly man, had been taken into exile into Babylon in 605 BC. The king of Babylon was a guy by the name of Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel chapter 2. And we read in chapter 2, verse 1, in the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had what? Dreams. His mind was troubled and he could not sleep. So the king summoned the who? Magicians. You see it? Enchanters, sorcerers, and who else? Astrologers. We're starting to see the ancestors of the Magi who came to visit Jesus. We see that some of them were living back in Babylon, which, by the way, at that time, Babylon was the world empire. You had the Medes and the Persians under them. We see that during King Nebuchadnezzar's reign, he has a dream and he calls upon these type of wise men. They came and stood before the king. And he said to them, I had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means. Then the astrologists answered the king. May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we're going to interpret it. The king said to his astrologers, no way, Jose. That's my translation in the Hebrew, okay? This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will cut you into pieces, and your houses will be turned into piles of rubble. How about that deal? But if you do tell me the dream and explain it, you'll receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. So tell me the dream and interpret it for me. Once more they replied, let the king tell his servants the dream first, then we'll interpret it. The king answered, I am certain that you're trying to gain time, because you realize that this is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me the dream, this is the only penalty for you. You have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping the situation will change. So then tell me the dream, and I will know that you can interpret it for me. And look at the response of the astrologists. There's no one on earth who can do what you're asking. You're not telling us the dream and you want us to interpret it? No, king. However great and mighty has ever asked such a thing of any magician, of any enchanter, or any astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult. No one can reveal it to the king except the gods. And they do not live among the humans. Well, when Daniel heard about this, Daniel says, I can't interpret it, but my God can. So look what happens. Verse 26, Nebuchadnezzar asked Daniel, who's also called Belshazzar, are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it? Daniel replied, no wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to you the mystery the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the days to come. Your dream and the visions that pass through your mind as you were lying in bed are these. And then Daniel goes on to interpret the dreams of the king without the king even telling him what the dreams were. Well, how do you think King Nebuchadnezzar responded? Go over to verse 46. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel, and he paid him honor. And he ordered that an offering and incense be presented to Daniel. The king then said to Daniel, surely your God is the God of gods, and the Lord of kings, and the revealer of mysteries. For you were able to reveal this mystery. Then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him. He made Daniel ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed Daniel in charge of all of its wise men. And by the way, Daniel asked for his 3 buddies to be promoted too. What were their names? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And by the way, what was the dream that Daniel interpreted for King Nebuchadnezzar? Basically, Daniel said, King Nebuchadnezzar, you saw a big statue? The gold? That's you, Nebuchadnezzar. That's Babylon. You're the best. But you're going to die, and your kingdom's going to come down. Because the next group, the silver, arms and breast, that's the Medes and Persians. But don't worry, Nebuchadnezzar, you're going to die before this happens. Nebuchadnezzar's happy. My kingdom's the best. Well, we know what happened in history. Babylon went down. Who took them down? Medes and Persians. But there was more to the statue. There was bronze. The bronze thighs, who were that? The Greeks. The Greeks ended up taking out the Medes and Persians. Then you had the feet. You had the feet that were legs of iron and partly of clay. Who were that? The Romans. But isn't it interesting? There was someone else added to that dream. Verse 44. In the time of those kings, talking about those different kingdoms, the God of heaven will set up a what? Kingdom that will never be destroyed. Nor will it be left to another people. God's kingdom that would have an eternal king will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end. But God's kingdom will endure forever. And then Daniel said to Nebuchadnezzar, this is the meaning of the vision of the rock that was cut out of the mountain. But it was not cut out by human hands. It is a rock of salvation that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold to pieces. Who's the rock? Jesus Christ. So watch. We see the early evidence of the Magi back in Babylon. They weren't kings. They were astrologists and astronomers. They were from the east. They were from a priestly tribe within the Medes and Persians. And we see here that a godly man by the name of Daniel was put over them. Well, let me ask you something. Do you think maybe it's fair to say that Daniel, a godly man who knew the scriptures and the prophecy of the rock that was going to come, you think Daniel maybe had a bit of influence on the Magi way back then, which, by the way, this was about 600 years before the birth of Christ? You think Daniel maybe had a little bit of influence on them? Let me ask you, do you think Daniel would have told them about another pagan who prophesied something about a star? Go to Numbers chapter 24. You guys ever hear of a guy by the name of Balaam? And Balaam's what? Donkey. Balaam was a pagan. He was a Gentile pagan prophet who also, watch me, was an expert in the supernatural. Well, God got a hold of him, and God basically revealed a prophecy through this pagan Balaam. But it was God's words. Watch. Verse 15. The prophecy of Balaam, son of Beor, the prophecy of one whose eye sees clearly, the prophecy of one who hears the words of God, who has knowledge from the Most High, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who falls prostrate and whose eyes are opened. Here's the vision from God that Balaam was about to announce. I see him. Who's him? But not now. I don't see him now. I behold him, but he's not near yet. Oh, a what? Star will come out of Jacob, meaning Israel. A scepter. Who holds a scepter? A king will rise out of Israel. Right here, God was prophesying 1,400 years before Christ through another pagan Gentile supernaturalist that one of the signs of the Messiah was going to be a star. You think maybe the Magi during Daniel's time, when Daniel told him about this prophecy, you think those guys would have been interested? Of course. Look what they were experts in. And you think maybe they'd have asked Daniel, hey, Daniel, this star, your Messiah, Did your God also tell you maybe where he's going to be born? Yeah, Daniel would have said to him, yeah, through one of our other prophets, Micah. Go to Micah 5:2. I'm certain Daniel probably spoke to those astrologers back then and magicians, and not only told them about the star that was going to come out of Israel, that would be a sign of the one, the king holding the scepter. I'm sure Daniel would have told them about where the birth of this great Messiah was going to be. I'm sure Daniel told them about chapter 5, verse 2, where God said, but you who? Bethlehem, Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be what? Ruler over Israel, whose origins are from old, meaning from all eternity, from ancient times. Go now to Matthew chapter 2, and let's put this together. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, and after his first temple visit in Jerusalem, and during the time of King Herod, king of Judea, Magi from the east, possibly Persia, we're not sure, they came to Jerusalem and they asked in the Greek continuously, where's the King of the Jews? Where's the King of the Jews? Where's the King of the Jews? Well, how would they have known about the King of the Jews? We saw his what? Star. When it rose, and we have come to worship who? The star? Him. So these particular Magi were probably God-fearing Gentiles who were waiting and waiting and waiting for what? That which was probably passed down to them all the way back from Daniel about the star that's going to come. The one, that's going to be the sign of the one, the king holding the scepter, and it would be in Bethlehem. So when they, oh, by the way, notice, the star did not lead them from the east. What does it say? We saw his star. The star was not going to lead them until later. Go down to verse 9. After they left Jerusalem, after talking to King Herod, and went to Bethlehem, it was then that the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. Do you notice? So watch. They were from the east, right? They would have been very curious when they saw this great star in Judea. Well, wait a second, Andrew. How big of a star did it need to be for them to be able to see it? It needed to be a big star, right? You had to have some serious light shining for them to, their attention to be, whoa, that might be it. That might be the sign. Now, there are so many people that have tried to explain what that star could be. Let me ask you a question. What do you think that great light was that got their attention? What shone around the shepherds? The Shekinah glory of God. Do you think that bright light could have gotten their attention in the east? And again, notice it says, they came not to worship the star. They came to worship Christ. Did you guys learn about the Magi? Do you have an idea of who they were? Do you see how possibly they would have been prepared for that big star, that big light? Because through the influence of Daniel, a good godly man in exile in Babylon 600 years earlier, who was given position over them. I'm sure he had influence on them. I'm sure he told them all kinds of Old Testament prophecies, including Numbers 24, the star, including the prophecy in Micah, Bethlehem. These Magi were ready. Unlike the next guy we're going to meet, Herod